right. So let's go ahead and get started. We're so excited to have Josephine Rydberg joining us today. And we've been collaborating on this Erasmus EDGE project, particularly on the tech toolkit, which has been really enlightening. You know, a lot of people who study analog role-playing games don't know much about technology, or at the very least, or maybe even resistant to technology because it can get in the way of the experience. So I'm super interested in hearing about your research as someone who's a LARPer who also is operating within VR. Before we get too into that, I'm Sarah Lynn Bowman. This is the Transformative Play Initiative at Uppsala University. And just to let you know that this event is part of our Erasmus Cooperation Partnership for curriculum development in transformative game design. So what that means is we have been bringing a super team together from Sweden, Uppsala University, Turku University of Applied Sciences, Dragon's Nest, Chaos League, and Avalon LARP Studios. And what we're doing is we are augmenting some master's curriculum and writing a textbook and all sorts of exciting stuff. One of the things we're doing is exploring advanced technology and seeing how it might potentially augment transformative experiences through LARP and tabletop as well. So I am just so happy to know Josephine. She's a very adventurous person. She's willing to try things and jump right in. You know, we ran a pretty, you know, woo-woo spiritual game, and she just jumped right into it. And I feel like she's such a blessing to have in our team. So I'm super excited for you to hear about her work today. Before we get into that, let me give your presenter bio. So Josephine Rydberg is a PhD candidate at Stockholm University of the Arts. Her interests revolve around the entanglement of linear narratives and participatory creative actions, including finding best practices for adapting LARP designs to a virtual environment. Her research project, Dramaturgy for Participatory Practices, explores examples from LARP and social VR. Rydberg has held a position as a cross-media developer for the City Council of Gothenburg since 2014 and has developed a number of innovative projects mixing storytelling and new technology. Her current projects include VR and World Heritage, Games Culture, and Storytech Conference. She's been super into LARPing since the early 90s, and was one of the founding members of Gothenburg's first LARP Society. She holds an MA in Film and Theater from the University of Sheffield and MAs in Film Production from the University of Gothenburg and Stockholm Academy of the Arts. So thank you so much for joining us, and I will go ahead and mute and I will give it to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, and thanks to everybody who is listening. And hi to Simon. I thought I saw your name in the list of participants, and hi to everyone else as well. Thanks for being here and sharing this time and attention with me. I would like to make this presentation as interactive as absolutely possible. So if you have any questions, I know we have a Q&A at the end, but try and make yourselves heard if I'm saying something that you want to comment on or you want to explain more. So just try and derail me if you can. I've got my slides, so my railroad tracks are laid down. You can do your best to get me sidetracked. We won't succeed, I promise. Okay. So I've named this talk Mud in the Machine, and it's a bit of a test run for me. I'm doing my 80% seminar. That's what we do in artistic research. We do a 30, a 50, and an 80% public seminar as a way of sharing our research and testing it before the dissertation. So I'm doing my 80% seminar in November, on November the 8th. So this is a bit of a test run to get me to see if my findings are good enough for the 80%, which I hope they are. So I'm calling this Mud in the Machine, how to make the most of your next BR LARP. Let's see where this takes us. Got my slides, here we go. I'm very much inspired by the writings of Donna Haraway, the great compostist, as she calls herself these days, not posthumanist, she calls herself a compostist. And this quote is from her Cyborg manifesto. It's a few years old now, and I think it's super inspiring. And I mean, the Cyborg manifesto, when it came out in the 90s, it kind of created a wave of cyborg feminism and artist activism, kind of a wave of online art, especially. That was very transgressive and very inspiring to me. But it says the cyborg would not recognize the Garden of Eden. It is not made of mud and cannot dream of returning to dust. And I thought, if this is something that we as humans hold, the dreaming of returning to dust and being made out of mud, we should pay more attention to it maybe and treasure it. And I'm trying to pour some of this human mud into the machine by doing Nordic LARPy things in virtual reality as a way of hopefully changing that space to something that allows more nuance and to create an atmosphere in the virtual worlds that I would like to live in. If we are to spend a lot of time in these worlds, in the now and the future, I would like for them to be a nicer place. And I think LARP design and LARPy skills can help promote that sort of change. Right, so kicking off from Donna Haraway, the mud quote. This is a little bit about what we'll be talking about. I'll be presenting myself. I'll be talking about the context and the mix of virtual reality, socialness, and LARPing. This is my experience of two merging communities, or two merging traditions. I'll treat you to another Haraway quote on why stories matter. We'll talk about how to mince our words properly. And we'll talk about how to make a good LARP and good LARPers. We'll talk about embodiment, some posthumanist ethics, and the Carpenter effect. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's very hocus pocusy. It's a lot of fun. We'll talk I'll come up with some suggestions for nuanced play. We'll talk about an audience and realities versus realism, which is my suggestion to you, that we kind of drop the word realities. We use the word reality for virtual reality, augmented reality, XR realities, mixed realities, and I'm getting a bit tired of the reality word. Maybe realisms is a better fit for these practices. Right, so me, I'm Josephine Rydberg. I'm sometimes called Joffe or Joe. You'll find me on social media under Joffe Rydberg or Joffe RL. I'm employed as a developer for cross media at the County Council of Gävleborg. That means I work 2 days a week nowadays in Gävle, and they're my full-time employer. So within this employment, I am granted research time to do my PhD, which is a very, very privileged position. And I do the PhD at the Stockholm University of the Arts, at the Film and Media Institution. And I plan to be finished in May 2026. So if you want to join me on any virtual adventures, I am fully funded until 2026. Right. just to clarify a few things, we talk about VR, or what I will talk about VR. I mean the sort of virtual reality where you are fully immersed, you have a full body leap. I will come back to this leap. You have a sort of a full body and you can move fairly mirrored like to what you move in, how you move in reality. It is also social, so it's not a game designed for you. It's not a game where you like choose your own adventure and compete, or you play against the machine. You play with others. Other people are also in this virtual reality, and you see them represented as their digital selves or their digital others, perhaps. And I talk about LARP and the Nordic LARP style, which focuses, of course, on collaboration a lot. It's not very gamey. We don't count points or anything. We collaborate to create the best story, the best drama. It's often transparent, and we calibrate with each other how to play this. It can be serious. When you read definitions on Nordic LARP, it often mentions the fact that Nordic LARP does not shy away from heavy topics. It can also be very silly, and I very much appreciate both. Right. So, VR, virtual reality, when you first step into it, and it can be a little bit awkward. It takes a while to get your bearings, to move around. So if you decide to take part of a VR LARP, make sure that you get some practice time first, that you know how to move your avatar, you know how the controls work, how you talk to others, who can hear you. Just make sure you know your tools. And if you're designing for players in virtual reality, make sure that you design for workshops so that people have time to try and figure out which buttons to press, basically. Now the gear is constantly updated, and new headsets are being released every year. Today it's possible. I'm on a Quest. I'm on an Oculus Quest 3, and today it's possible to let go of the hand controls, which is a huge relief. Suddenly you can make use of your hand gestures in a different way, but also certain hand gestures mean certain things. So you might think you're doing a cool gesture, but this cool gesture is actually a command, and it triggers something in the menu. So even if you can let go of the controls, there are some maybe not so visible controls that you need to get yourself familiar with. This picture, by the way, is from my 50% seminar, where everybody had to pretend to be in VR, but dressed in cardboard beeps. Okay. Right. So when I started my PhD, I had the idea that I wanted to investigate participatory storytelling, or the sort of storytelling that's the sort of dramaturgy that uses different logics, that mixes kind of gaming narratives or game design with a linear story. And I thought I was going to be spending a lot of time on immersive theater, but it turns out I started in 2018, and the headset just got so good that most of my research completely tilted towards VR from the very beginning, and to try and create LARPs in VR. And my first test was a short form, a free form scenario called, I think it was first called AI Seance, but then it changed its name to Crystal Tech. In the fiction, Crystal Tech was this artificial intelligence enhanced method company that licensed seances, where you could hook up to an AI and get help, kind of tap into the other side or get in touch with your spiritual guide. I have some background in this, so I thought it would be interesting to see how far I could get with the tech and to design around that. it was fun. I commissioned someone to do the programming for me, and we ended up with this. As you can see in the big picture there are a lot of buttons. And I think this is one of the reasons why this attempt was actually a fail, which, you know, in research, it doesn't matter. It's all about the learning experience. But as a game, it was kind of a failed attempt, or as a LARP, it wasn't a LARP. Because when you have all these gorgeous buttons, you want to press them all. And that kind of affordance built in to this kind of menu with a lot of buttons. Want to press the button, want to trigger things to happen just because you can. Right. So Crystal Tech was a bit too railroady to really be a LARP, I think. Oh, too quick. Yeah. So there's me and my programmer. We're play testing this. So it was designed for 4 people sitting opposite each other and kind of doing readings for each other, and being helped in virtual reality by representations of ghost spirits standing behind the person you were reading, and sound triggered to single players individually. So it was more like a verbatim theater, you know, the kind of theater where actors wear headsets and get their lines whispered in their ear. It was perhaps closer to that sort of experience than an actual LARP, because the improv was very limited, I think. Okay, so that was Crystal Tech. Bit of a fail, but an interesting ride. And then I went on to do a Nordic LARP talk about how boring VR was, how desperately I needed some company in there, and please, would some LARPers come and join me? And this talk is still up on the Nordic LARP website. And it was fun to hold the talk, and I got some feedback, but no one really at Knutepunkt, this was in 2020, I think. Knutepunkt, there was no one really caught on, or no one really approached me to do anything, except of course Nadia Lipsick, who's we've been collaborating on stuff. But 2 weeks later, I get an email from someone I'd never heard of before saying, hello, I also LARP in VR. Can we talk? So I met Ames or Elusive and Silen in a VR world that Silen has created. And I've been in touch with Silen and Elusive ever since, and getting to know where they come from. They come from a role-playing community in VR chat specifically. And they've been trying to get into more Nordic LARP style playing. So they've been trying to shift their community from the kind of gamey kind of role play they've been doing towards something that's a little more about the group dynamics and relationships and the drama and the what we know as Nordic LARP. And that was like a gift to me to meet Eliseth and Silen, who are both very experienced, very creative, and very clever, and do really great things. And we now collaborate on some things, which is I'm very thankful for. So this is a picture of the community that approached me. This is a picture from a session in the tool shed. Tool shed is set up by Silen with the lovely droopy ears. And the tool shed is a place for practicing improv in virtual reality. And that's me in the turquoise hair standing behind. And we try to document every tool shed session by taking a picture. We try not to record it because we think it makes us a bit self-conscious perhaps. And that we're more in the moment if it's not recorded, but we take a photo every time. Unfortunately, this is organized by people who live in the States. So for me, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday morning. So it's quite awkward, but usually I set the alarm and I get up. And once you're in there and you start improvising, it's so much fun and it's so energizing. You should all come and join us. Right. Now, what I found out from Silent and Elisif and all that crowd is that there are so many LARP adjacent activities in VR. There are role plays. There are the other role plays, which are usually very militaristic. There's improv, there's escape routes, there's Jubinshaw, and there's tabletop-ish. So Exia is one of the apps that's not VR chat. It's a different app that you download to your headset or whatever platform you're using. And Exia is a good example of what can be done. They cater for a virtual reality experience that is a kind of a hybrid between a tabletop role-playing game and maybe a LARP, where you kind of use your virtual character to act your adventurer in a quest. And the games master can see the map and change the setting and insert monsters or treasures for the team the posse to find, all of those things. Exia, I highly recommend. I've tested it a couple of times, and it should be free to download a beta. Otherwise, you can just get in touch with me, and I'll connect you with the guys who are promoting it, and they'll hook you up. It's good fun and also very easy to use. It's much easier to design a world in Exia than to design a world in VR chat if you're interested in creating worlds and hosting things. I must say. So the RPs especially are very LARP-like. They have lots of people moving around, chasing their storylines that sometimes merge and sometimes create conflict. And these are some titles of ongoing role plays in VR chat. The Wardens of Leafside, Ether Chronicles, Waypoint, Near Divide, Worlds Apart. There are many more. So if you're ready to explore, there's so much for you out there to discover. I was surprised. I thought I was the only one, but apparently lots of people have been doing it for a very long time. If you want to get acquainted with the theme without diving into it, I highly recommend the Couch Form podcast. There is Silent in the floppy hat and Solace represented by a two-dimensional black and white picture. They are both VR LARPers and interested in design. So if you want to get into the design thinking of this community, this is a very good place. And we are collaborating on something, a server represented on Discord called Scenario 1. And in Scenario 1, under this umbrella, we play one-off short form games. Because the other RPs, what's different between what we are used to as Nordic LARPers, they are ongoing campaigns. They play like once a week, they go on for hours, and then they kick off where the last one, where you ended the last one, you start the next one. So every week you immerse yourself into the same world and you pursue the continuation of a storyline from week to week. In Scenario 1, we do one-off. So we take something like, here's my power button, a short form scenario played at the Stockholm Scenario Festival, or Aniara 2.0, also played at the Stockholm Scenario Festival. And we translate them into VR and host the games in VR. Scenario 1, also recently we held a game jam for people who want to try their hand at designing and writing virtual reality LARPs, one-off, short form. And we are currently in the process of testing the winners. So the winners get a play test and lots of applause. The tool shed is what I showed you a picture of earlier. It's a practice space where we try our improv skills and try and hone our skills at expressing and creating a character. And then there's on Discord a server called the Myriad, where there are a lot of LARP design discussions that I also highly recommend. If you're curious, dive into that. Now, back to Donna Haraway. So, I mean, a lot of people use this quote. I'm absolutely not the only one. This is Staying with the Trouble is a Donna Haraway book, a text she published that has been hugely impactful, not only on artistic research, but on many, many people. And this quote is at the heart of it. I'm going to read it out loud. And if it's the first time you encounter this, she's saying the same kind of thing in many different ways. Don't worry if you don't get them all. Just pick the one that kind of suits you. So Donna Haraway says, "It matters what matters we use to think other matters with. It matters what stories we tell to tell other stories with. It matters what nots. What thought, think thoughts. What descriptions describe descriptions. What ties, ties. It matters what stories make worlds and what worlds make stories." I think for me, it's basically the idea that our stories shape our thinking and our thinking shapes the world. And it's a wonderful bit of pragmatic magic, I think. Anyway, so if stories matter and knots matter and words matter, what to call things? I've beeped out this word many times. I try not to use the word avatar anymore. So all the games use the word avatar. You choose it, you design it, and you use it as your puppet. But since it's a bit of cultural appropriation in this, I try to use other words. For now, the best I can come up with is digital representation of self or virtual character. I don't know. If you have better ideas, please tell me. And if I stumble on this, if I say the beep, please correct me. I'm trying to avoid it. And if you correct me, that would be so very helpful. Okay, but made of mud. Right. Sorry, Sarah, I didn't warn you about this one. I once asked a LARP designer, about the secret to making a good LARP. And they said, a bit flippantly, a bit cynically, you get good LARPers. Okay. But if we don't all wanna cast superstar LARPers, and there are very many good LARPers about, but in the best case scenario, you want to run your LARP many times in VR, and then you can't always know the LARPers you're casting. So you make good LARPers. You design workshops to make everybody comfortable and aware of their tools for creating characters and for creating interesting relationships with other characters and a good story. So how do we make good LARPers? I think some of it, of course, the secret is in the source, and the source is the workshopping. So design good workshops. Design, and if you are designing for virtual reality, you need to design so that you are allowing players to be completely one with their virtual representation of their character. They need to fill that virtual skin so it feels like their skin. And to do that, we're making use of a concept called the body transfer illusion. And I'm going to quickly show you a little video, if I can. I think it's, oh, how can I know this? There we go. So this is what the body transfer illusion is all about. Oh, do we not have sound? Yeah, we have sound.
Okay, Lynn, so what we've got here is you're sitting at the table, your left hand is in normal position. You can't actually see your right hand because it's behind the screen. And in front of you, I've put a rubber prosthetic hand. Okay, now what I'm going to do is show you how malleable your sense of body is. I'm going to start brushing or stroking your right index finger at exactly the same time as the rubber finger and in exactly the same place. Now as I do this, right now you're feeling touch on your right hand, but after a minute or so, you'll start to feel...
Oh, that feels very strange. I'm starting to feel it in that hand.
Okay, so you're feeling the touch. You feel that I'm touching you.
On the hand?
On the rubber hand.
Yeah.
If I get you to quickly close your eyes and point to your index finger with your left hand. Yeah. So that's pretty typical as well, where people will actually feel a displacement of their hand and that it's actually where this rubber hand is. And the illusion is actually strong enough that if you threaten or strike this hand, you actually have a genuine physiological response.
That was very strong. My heart's going.
That's right. So I distressed some undergraduates doing that. And if we put electrodes on you to measure the response, you actually get the same response, me striking this hand, as if I'd struck your real hand or your left hand.
Wow.
So it just demonstrates in only a minute that actually your sense of body and your sense of self is quite changeable and manipulatable. Table, your left.
Right, back to presentation. So this little video, it's kind of gimmicky. It still shows us that the perception of our body is malleable. We can trick it, basically. And if we can believe that a rubber hand is our hand, then I suggest we can also start believing that the virtual representation of self that we can see and we can feel how it moves around, we can make ourselves believe that that is us, basically. And that creates a stronger presence, of course, and gives you, there's more at risk when you play. So it creates for more intensely felt play, is my suggestion. And how do we do this?
Okay, Lynn, so what...
So we do this a bit the same kind of way that they do with a rubber hand. We look at ourselves. So if we are in a world where there's a mirror, we can see our virtual representation of character. And then we move our arm and we can see our arm moving. And we, as he did in the video, also talk about what's happening. So if I'm leading the workshop, I will talk about you feel your arm racing as you see the virtual arm racing. And once we go through a few of these exercises, you will hopefully start to feel that the virtual body is your body, that the virtual skin is your skin. So, but by mirroring the physical movement and the virtual movement. We can create a sense of make-believe, and the visual input is so strong that even if we don't have all the tactile, though we can create some of the tactile sense as well in the workshop. It's more about the feeling from the inside, the physical perception of the from inside, and the visual input that helps to create this sense of body transfer illusion. Now, of course, there's nothing new under the sun, and the body transfer illusion is well known by role players in virtual reality. They call it the sense of phantom body. So a phantom body sense is what we're trying to trigger in these workshops. So yeah, this is all about training the individual to be a better LARPer. All of these exercises we go through is about controlling the embodiment, taking control of the embodiment until you feel that you fully fill your virtual skin. This is well and good for the single player. But when you're LARPing, you are hopefully not on your own. You are in a group of people. And for the group, I would suggest we also, we'll come back to this quote. I don't think we're ready for it yet. It's relevant, but we'll come back to it. I've lost some slides, I think. Yeah. Anyway, group awareness I wanted to talk about. How do we create this phantom body and then extend that perception outward to the group? So we are more in tune with the group. We find our improv skills more in sync. So we want to try some exercises to trigger phantom body sense and hone that group perception and that herd competence, that common agency. And in some ways of doing that, we did last week together with dancer and choreographer Martin Sonderkamp. He created an exercise for some of us. We met in VR chat. Now, Silent, you recognize Silent from before, created this world for some scenarios, and they apologized later on because the world isn't very nice. It's meant to be slightly uncomfortable. We didn't notice at the time because we were having a lot of fun. So this was some of the stuff that happened during the embodiment workshop with Martin Sonderkamp.
From the beginning, very deep. You deepen them into doing. Beautiful.
Poor Nalo on the edge of the sofa here is on desktop, not in a headset, and can't move around.
Nice.
Feeling very left out.
Brilliant. Oh, this is so beautiful. Nice.
Yeah, I'm going to cut that a little bit short. I just wanted to show you that we are all starting to synchronize our movements around some sort of collaboration. It's unspoken. We may all have different ideas of what we're doing, but we're doing something together. Because by this time we've been workshopping together for 45 minutes, and we're getting in sync somehow. I think this was the first time we had this kind of embodiment workshop with Martin, who's absolutely a specialist on this kind of thing. He's one of the teachers of dance and choreography at Stockholm Academy of the Arts. And he was kind of mind blown about how easy it was to move, and how keen people were to move around. So it was a bit of a wow experience for all of us in there. And I'll try and arrange another workshop with him soon, because we all felt that we needed to do more of this. So once you've created the sense of presence and you're starting to project it outwards, so you get you get sensitized, and you get that very sensitive perception that makes it easy to improvise with each other. It's time to think about your design narrative and the guidelines, what guides you around that. And this is where I think this kind of ethics quote is important. Another one of my heroes is Rosie Braidotti, who's a post-humanist philosopher. And the quote is kind of about posthumanism and the posthumanist ethic. So Rosie says, in my view, posthuman ethics urges us to endure the principle of not one at the in-depth structures of our subjectivity by acknowledging the ties that binds us to multiple others in a vital web of complex interrelations. This ethical principle breaks up the fantasy of unity, totality, and oneness, but also the master narrative of primordial loss, incommensurable lack, and irreparable separation. What I want to emphasize instead, in a more affirmative vein, is the priority of the relation and the awareness that one is the effect of the irrepressible flows of encounters, interactions, affectivity, and desire, which one is not in charge of. This focus on our relationships with each other and with other beings, things, whatever, is something I find very inspiring and very pertinent to a virtual environment. So it's the relationship with what exists between me and the other player, and it's also what exists between me and the tech and the programming. And this is where I think it starts becoming really interesting, because virtual reality, such as VR chat, such as any social virtual space, as with so much of the tech coming from Silicon Valley, it's kind of built on a transhumanist logic. It's very transhumanist, very focused on the human, the Anthropocene, as the center of the universe, or at the top of the pyramid. And I think the posthuman offers something else, that is about the relationship, what exists between self and others. We should be paying more attention. It's not about us letting others have a voice. They already have a voice. We just need to make space for it, create that relationship. It's not about including, it is about recognizing what is already there. So that's why I think this idea of a post-humanist ethic is very important. Keep in the back of your head when you're LARPing, but especially when you're in this transhumanist environment that virtual reality is. Resist. Right, now, and another thing I think is important, especially for the group awareness thing, how to project your perception outwards and perceive others, is an idea I often make use of. It's the Carpenter effect. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's sometimes called the ideomotor effect. or the ideomotor reflex. And it can be interpreted in kind of two different ways. One is mistrusting, and one is more positive. So the Carpenter effect is a physical response you have to something you perceive, but you're not aware that you're perceiving. And in the case of a fake seance, like like some of the people that were exposed in the 19th century, of course, there may be an intention and an awareness then to get that Ouija board moving or get the table dancing or whatever. But when you're looking for water using a stick, the dowsing stick, the intention is to find water, not to impress lovable society ladies. So if you use the dowsing stick example, I think it's more useful, it's more interesting. Then the ideomotor response is something the body reacts to without you being aware of it. So I'm thinking you pick up on something that is so subtle, you're not really aware that you're picking up on it. When you're holding a dowsing stick for water, maybe it's a smell, maybe it's a change in temperature that you're not really aware of, but it's something that tells you the water is here, and your body reacts to that something, and it tilts the stick. And I'm thinking that this skill or this Carpenter effect is also something that we can try and encourage within ourselves to create a stronger relationship between players, to make it easier to pick up on little nuances that other players may be offering, just to make the group more sensitive and perceptive to nuance. Also, it's a fun idea to play around with, I think. So once you've prepared your LARPers and turned them into good LARPers, and your group is ready to start LARPing, what sort of scenarios are then suitable for VR? I know a lot of the RPs have a lot of players. They can be like 100 people in a campaign. Not everybody all at once, but I think the limit in the VR chat is something like 40 people in one map or one world. So if you're that many in one session, it's difficult to keep track of everybody. So I suggest you start with a smaller cast, like a more like a chamber LARP. And one of the contributions to our game jam this year was Coming Home, written by Elusive. And if you want to try it out, I can make it accessible to you. And it's also the kind of chamber LARP that is very familiar to us who are Nordic LARPers. It's kind of that liminal space that we know from a lot of scenario festivals and that sort of thing, Black Box Festival. This example, Coming Home, is a 3-player LARP, so you can pay lots of attention to the other players. It's 5 scenes. It's about coming out as a trans person. So in the first scene, you're leaving university, you're setting out in the world, you're on your way home. Christmas, I think. Very charged situation. Then there's the scene at the diner with the bigot, the scene with the coolest trans person you know. There's driving and picking up a hitchhiker, a well-meaning old school friend, and the final stretch before home and arrival. So this is the sort of design of a scenario that I think a lot of us Nordic LARPers are familiar with. So I think that would be a good place to start trying out your VR LARP skills. Right. Oh, yes. Then there is another thing. When you are VR LARPing, you may not be alone. And to Nordic LARPers especially, this takes some getting used to. There may be an audience to your LARPing. It may not just be you and that other person you're so intimately engaged with. they may be streaming the whole thing to their following, and there may be a discussion about what you're doing, what you're talking about, with cheerful suggestions or derogatory comments or whatever. There is a big community on Twitch for streamed roleplay, of course, and even LARPs. Now, in scenario 1, we try to avoid streaming, but we're also aware that that is the bread and butter of some players. They need that income, so it's hard to completely restrict it. Well, but if you're not familiar with this scene, I suggest you go and look at a few streams and get yourself acquainted with the scene. I think if you want to stream yourself, you have to be aware that it changes something. I mean, it's a bit similar to writing a diary. At first, you start writing a diary to record what happens in your life. And then after a while, you start living your life so you have fun things to write in your diary. You know, even if it's only for yourself, it changes something. So if it's for an external audience, it's even more powerful, I think. And it makes you kind of want to create content for your following. So maybe you're more focused on the following than the player you are currently engaged with in the LARP. That may not necessarily be the case, of course, but I'm saying it's a possibility. Okay. Yeah, so I think that instead of using all the realities that we're using in this techie context, this transhumanist XR context, mixed reality, augmented realities, virtual realities, other realities, I suggest we start using realisms. I think that is more accurate now. Because if you use the word realism, it tells you that it's fiction of a sort, that it's subjective, and you can use the internal realism, social realism, fictional, magical realism, and agential realism. And when you say agential realism, that leads in onto Karen Barad, who is a new materialist. She's a physicist and philosopher. That, I mean, it's a bit mean of me to hit you with a quote, another quote this late in the presentation, but I think that's where we're heading. I think realism is a better word because it helps you reflect more. It helps you with the meaning making of a situation. It helps you listen to self and reflect what you think of this particular realism. So that you can be your own sounding board, if you will, and less influenced by whatever authority that's shouting the loudest at the moment. And I think since when VR was first released as a public media or a mass media, they made a lot of fuss about it being the empathy machine. If you step into someone's shoes, like you can do with VR, it creates empathy. I'm not sure that it does create empathy, but it could create empathy. I think LARPing is definitely based in that virtual reality realism where it could happen. Right. So a short quote about agential realism and Karen Barad's interaction concept. She says that interaction understands agency not as not an inherent property of an individual or human to be exercised, but as a dynamism of forces. It's kind of similar to the Barad and Braidotti idea of the relationship being what defines you. It's not you holding those properties, it's the relationships you create, or the relationships you have creates you, I might say. Which I think is an interesting way of looking at the world. Right, here's a realism for you, or a mix of realisms. This was me when we were doing the embodiment workshop with Martin Sunderkamp. It was during Medieval Week, so this is me with my mixed realisms. Here are some of the links if you want them, and then I'll wrap up and open up for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. If you could stop sharing, that'd be great.
There we go.
Thank you for that super fascinating talk. And I really appreciate you breaking things down for us, but then also interspersing it with some theory. It's really rich that way. There have been some questions primarily about logistics, because as LARPers, a lot of us don't know how this works. So could you explain what the interface would be like? Like, how do you hear each other's voices?
Yeah. And that's a big part of it. The audio design is in virtual worlds is created so that if someone is virtually close to you, it doesn't matter if they're playing from Los Angeles or somewhere else. If they're virtually close to you, you hear them well. If they move away, so does their voice. So that means you can do workshopping, you can divide people into groups, send them off into different corners of the room, they can chat together, the groups won't hear each other, and then you can all gather in a big circle and compare notes kind of thing. So the audio design is super helpful.
And is that, would you say that's superior to something like Zoom, where you have breakout?
God, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I get screen fatigue from Zoom, from especially when you know, in meetings, trying to look interested and producing a look of interest. It's super tiresome. And in VR, you don't see, I mean, you can have any kind of look. You don't have to, it's your virtual representation people see. You don't have to be self-conscious about your nasal hairs showing on camera or whatever. You are much more present, and you can't have double screens. Once you're in VR, you're focused, you're completely there. You can't scroll on your telephone at the same time whilst producing the look of interest. You're completely there when you're in VR. So it's good for focus.
It's really fascinating because we live in such a distracting world. And of course, people likely are concerned about people getting sucked into these virtual worlds. But the idea that it could make you more present and maybe multitasking less, that's very interesting. One thing I noticed in the video that you showed us with the embodiment, and I don't know if it was just because on my end it was a little bit stuttered, but are the movements fluid or are they more choppy, would you say?
The movements are fluid, but there is about 2 seconds of a delay from that I see that your arm is raised when you're raising your arm. It takes about 2 seconds for me to see that. So there is a lag. There's definite lag. But the movements themselves can be super fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a group of choreographers that choreograph fighting scenes, and they make it look super fluid, which is pretty impressive. They have to backtrack and anticipate what marks to hit 2 seconds in advance, but they make it happen somehow. Super cool for nerds like me. Super cool.
And are people able to play music together in VR?
I mean, it has been done. There's some nice dancing sessions as well that you can see. Like there's a gathering called Project, which is a festival for lots of different VR chat initiatives and societies. They had like 300 contributors this year, like 30,000 visitors or something. And so it can be done. You need to be aware of the lag and you need to anticipate. So sometimes, I mean, long tones are good, or there has to be a canon or a fugue or something to make it work. But people do sing. There are choirs in VR chat and some fantastic karaoke clubs.
You've got my attention. Okay, so some questions from the audience. Could you share with us the platforms where you participate in VR LARPs?
It's mainly VR chat, which is why I showed the image of Exia, because it's something else. But Altspace, that I've mentioned before, I think that's closed down now, that's sunsetted. I'm worried about VR chat because they don't really have a business model. So they might not be there forever, but they are the most interesting space right now. It's an app that you download to your headset. But if they fold, something else will rise from their ashes, I'm sure.
Something that I find really fascinating about VR chat, when I was studying, World of Warcraft and these MMORPGs, there were very limited ways that you could customize your representation of self, right? And in fact, there was a lot of criticism around that with regard to race and ethnicity and even height and body shape and all that.
Yeah.
But with VR chat, it seems like you can have basically anything as your representation. Is that right? Where do you get these?
You can get them from Ready Player Me and upload your own photo, and it builds off that. But still, it's a catalog that you choose from, so it's a very limited tool set that it's again, the transhumanist logic infuses everything. Unless you learn to program yourself. Some people create wonderful avatars. Beep, I said it finally. I'm starting to relax now, that's why. But VR chat has some good fallback choices where you can be a robot, you can be there's a big furry community in VR chat, and they're the nicest people, and they have the nicest virtual representation, and they are super cuddly and cute. So that's my recommendation. Go with something non-human, I say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw quite a few non-human avatars, and you were talking about relations and intimacy to a degree. Does that get in the way, if it doesn't look super realistic, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I know there's a huge movement towards getting the hyper-realistic representation of self, which I think is a shame. I think it's going to be, we're going to scan ourselves, or we're going to scan our Instagram selves, tucking our tummies in, show the pimples on our necks don't show, and then we'll walk around as some weird Instagram version of ourselves. I much prefer this window that is now, where it can be a big fluffy cat. The uncanny valley, of course, yeah, it's still a thing. And I think that's why non-human representations are more fun. And you don't get stuck on what is alike and what is unlike. If you remember my avatar, that's one of the things that I'm objecting to. I've got tattoos. I've got facial tattoos. That's because there are no 53-year-old faces to choose from. There are no wrinkles anywhere to get as a filter on your face. So I chose some facial tattoos to have something that is not this face. Yeah.
That's really fascinating. So even though there's more options, things like age can be a factor.
Yeah.
Kind of related to this question around intimacy, and you're talking about relating in virtual space. Does player chemistry still exist in VR? If not, what is the effect of its absence? And if it does exist, how does it manifest?
I mean, of course, chemistry is still there, but your tool is a bit blunt compared to what you used to. I mean, the peripheral vision isn't very good in VR, and that's why I'm suggesting all these workshops to kind of tune in with others, kind of hone those skills of perception, because it's a little bit blunt when you go into VR. You can't sense anyone standing behind you. It's perfect for you know, the shock effect. You turn around and someone's there because you have no idea, because they're quiet and you can't feel the hairs at the back of your neck reacting to someone's presence. So you have to use other things. The visuals, the peripheral is limited. The visuals are very strong, and you have to make sure that you are paying each other attention. That helps the chemistry, and the voice is super important.
Mm-hmm.
The tone of voice is everything. I think that really informs the relationship.
I'm super interested in touch with regard to this, because that's one of the things that the human body, you know, it's special in a way. It was really fascinating to watch the video where, you know, there was the arm and, you know, she could feel it touching the prosthetic arm. Do people feel phantom touch in the same way they feel a phantom body?
Some people do, yeah. Some people definitely feel a phantom touch. I have never experienced it myself. I've talked to others who definitely have a clear experience of it. I think that if you want to design for that, you'd kind of have the player touch themselves and look at that happening, so that when it happens with someone else, they can recreate the sensation. I mean, when there was a question of consent as well, and when you LARP consent, you have to define what the safety rules are, so that you get consent for other people, and that's why you do workshops, of course. But then the opt-out in VR is super easy. You just take the headset off and you're back in your own living room on your own, with no threats around you. You can just, you know, turn it off, or hop to another world where your friends are. What you but there, if you go to a public world, I mean, put your arm on. There will be rude people there, and sometimes just very young people who just like to shout rude words because their parents aren't listening, or you know. But also unpleasant people. But you can block them. It's easy to block people via a chat, and then you'll never see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so complicated, because I'm just thinking about like being in person at a LARP, and in some ways it seems like the interface would be fairly limited compared to what somebody could actually physically do to you in a LARP. But when we are in person, there's a lot more social consequence for, you know, behavior. So, you know, there's this de-identification that can happen, you know, online. So it seems tricky, you know. It's like there's pros and cons in terms of consent. And we see a lot of the same sort of questions around, like, for example, role playing in Zoom and how easy it is to communicate with each other, a safety mechanic, for example. In certain ways it becomes easier, in other ways it might become more challenging. So it's really an interesting question.
Yeah, and I think we need to do more experiments to find out what the affordances really are and what the limits are to this. We need to experiment and evaluate more. I'm
curious if you have like a special VR LARP experience that you're willing to tell us about. Because right now we're talking a lot about the technology, but I'd like to know how intense it can be, or how, you know, emotionally powerful it can be.
Well, I've been at LARPs where people cry, for instance, and I've been super stressed. Like I've played the short form. Here's My Power Button by Brody. I played that as an analog LARP at Stockholm Scenario Festival, and I played that as a virtual LARP. And that's very much based on a discussion between, in the virtual version, I was the AI, the AI infused robot that was supposed to be trained by a human to be a companion. And that was quite an intimate and meaningful discussion. Another LARP I played was NAR 2.0, from the Harry Martinson's Aniara about the spaceship. It's a ethical polydilemma, and that was really helped by the design of that world. So Aniara is a spaceship heading towards, it's rescuing people from a dying earth, basically. So lots of people are put into cryo sleep. And at the start of the game, you're woken up because you're the leaders of different guilds. So there's like 6 of you. And the computer voice tells you that something happened and you're on a collision course with Neptune. And you have to make a decision that the steering mechanism of the spaceship has been damaged, unfortunately. But if you jettison a number of sleeping people, you might change the trajectory and save the rest. And the design of this world is made so that there's you are on the bridge of a spaceship, and there's a huge big panoramic window where you see Neptune as a little dot, and then it steadily grows and becomes closer and closer and closer. Yeah, there's really a time lock on that one that stresses you out, definitely. That was super intense when I played that. And some of the improv we've done at Toolshed has also been quite intense, and you know, you laugh out loud because it's so funny. So it's quite emotional.
So one thing that came out with the online LARPs, you know, especially through Zoom or through just Discord, is that it tends to be more believable. You were talking about realisms. It tends to be more believable if the technology is actually part of the scenario in some way. Do you find that to be the case with VR? Like it's easier for people to immerse if their characters are also in VR, for example?
I mean, it's that sounds a bit layered to me. I don't think I have that many layers when I'm in VR. I'm just there, completely there. And depending on how the map is designed, I mean, there's usually an off room. So you go to a place in the virtual map that's the off room, and you chat to everybody, and maybe you do some workshopping, and then you step through a portal, and it's like opening your eyes at a LARP. That's when it starts. That's when the fiction starts. Yeah, I think it's more real for the character. It's not necessarily more real for me, the player. I think. I have to think about this, though. I'm not sure, but I think so.
And people experience immersion in different ways. Some people really need that visual component, other people not so much. So, yeah. There's a couple of other interesting questions here. One question is the post VR LARP experience. And I actually had a question about this as well. Did you interview the participants afterwards?
I mean, for the crystal text scenario, I did the first one. I did interview people afterwards. For the games that I've participated in myself, I haven't interviewed anyone yet. I will interview a few people, but I'm not doing questionnaires like with the same questions for everybody. I'm interviewing different people for different things. Some people that have experienced phantom bodies, for instance, I'm definitely interviewing them. But it's with artistic research, the data is a lot more about what I experienced than having comparable interview data.
My question was actually related to phantom body. Like, how long does it last after a LARP?
I think as soon as you take your headset off, it's gone. Then you see a different reality. And it's everybody, even if you don't perceive a phantom sense, when you're in VR, you get a bit of a wow effect when you put the headset on. Then you get used to it. But then you get the same shock when you take the headset off. And they're like, oh, I'm still in my living room. How bizarre. I was just somewhere else in a magical land, but now I'm still here. So that shock is kind of interesting to me, but it's super brief. It's just half a second, but everybody gets it.
Fascinating. And of course, there are some people that can't really do VR because they have motion sickness. But you said that there's an online version, like through a web browser, is that right?
Yeah, you can access VR chat in a browser. It doesn't give you the same affordances. You can't maneuver as much, and you don't have as much agency. But you can see things, and you can get a sense of what's going on. And then you can also, be the audience on Twitch if you want to get an idea of what's going on. I actually got a tip from Karin Edman, a larper, some of you might know. She said that if she puts a fan on somewhere, that helps her keep her sense of direction, and it helps her from getting motion sickness in VR. She can't do it for very long, but it helps her if she has to do something. So that's the tip for you all.
Kind of helps you orient. Right.
There was a question in the chat that I saw and then forgot.
Yes. Do you debrief in VR or do you leave VR first? And you just sort of addressed this in terms of having an off-game space in VR, right? Do you also go to the off-game space for debriefing?
Yeah, there's lots of debriefing in an off-game space, and then there's usually a Discord server as well, where you can process and talk to people that you didn't get to talk to. But yeah, LARPing, some of the best parts of LARPing is talking about it afterwards, and all the cool things or missed out on, with others. So there's definitely, it may not be super organized, but there's a chance to talk to people anyway.
And a question around communication, like when you're in VR chat, can you like send a private message to people? Will they see it or whisper to certain people?
I really should have Silent here for this. Silent has created this fantastic menu for game masters where you can whisper in the player's ear, you can locate them immediately, you can show them a guiding light if you want to lead them somewhere on the map. It's super useful, and then people can just ping the game master if they need help. So there's a game master facilitator, usually in the bigger RPs anyway.
I'm just curious in terms of like intimacy, like intimate scenes between two people. You mentioned that people can pop in at any time, but also like, what if you want to have like some sort of planning session, secret planning session, and you don't want the other characters to overhear?
So it's easy to create a private instance for your game, so it's not public. You don't get random people popping in. And I think most of the big RPs, the big role-playing communities in VR chat, for instance, they don't do intimacy very much. They don't do like sexual liaisons or romance-based gaming very much. It's more the adventurer, go and kill the trolls, find the treasure kind of thing, style of play. But we are starting to explore other areas as well, but we need to take it slow and do it safe and make sure that we are doing it responsibly.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking
because we're all friends in our little group, it's a bit weird.
That makes sense. I'm just thinking about things that you could easily do in physical space that are harder to do online or vice versa, in terms of affordances.
I mean, if people manage to have sex on the phone, I'm sure they can do it in VR, and I'm sure they do all the time. It's just finding ways to do it that makes it interesting and safe for a LARP scenario.
What would you do with VR and LARP if there were no constraints around budget and bandwidth?
Oh, I just get more people involved. I get headsets for everybody. I just get, people to try it more. Because that's the biggest obstacle still, that it's not accessible to everybody. Not everybody has access to a headset. That's what I would do.
And what is the relationship between real reality, virtual reality, and diegetic reality? Easy question.
I have no idea. I think no, I don't have a good answer for that one. I think I'm gonna stick to my realism instead of reality. It's just a new media, and the relationship to the digest. I mean, the affordances for any kind of participatory, collaborative storytelling is very high in this media. So that makes it more realistic, I guess. Maybe.
Well, it certainly complicates what we call reality, right? Are there any ethical concerns to VR that we should be aware of?
Oh my God, yes, so many. First of all, we shouldn't produce more tech stuff. It's destroying the planet. Stop. And we can use a used headset, repair it, and so that's one. Also, you don't know who you're producing data for. You don't know what you are doing, what you are spending in terms of energy when you're spending time in VR. I've been looking to get numbers for this. I was hoping maybe to create a little meter of some sort, so I could make informed decisions. I don't know what sort of servers I'm on. Yeah, no, lots of questions. Again, the tech world is very transhumanist, and it's a bit of a colonial logic, really. But I'm trying my best to infuse it with other ideals, and that's why I'm persisting in this mission for LARP in VR.
Well, that sounds like a good place for us to leave it. Somebody says VR LARP is much friendlier to the planet than the travel and lodging that goes into most in-person's LARP. Maybe on the individual basis. I'm curious about, like, if we consider everybody's headsets, for example. But yeah, since LARPs tend to be quite small, that's probably true. All right. Well, thank you so much for such an interesting talk, and everybody give Joffe a round of applause. Just in terms of what's coming up for us, we have Avalon Game Studio, who are going to do a talk for us. And I don't have the title and description yet, but I will send that out. If you are not already subscribed to our mailing list, that's a great way to get information. We're also on Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel that has over 100 videos. So if you want to subscribe to that, you will get this video amongst others once the captions are done. So that's going to be on September 17th, same time and same virtual place. All right. Thank you very much. This has been so interesting. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.